Hey guys, welcome back. I want to jump in today on some Faith Bible Institute things. I'm hoping to do this maybe once a month, kind of things that have excited me about what I'm learning in Faith Bible Institute. So let me start by kind of telling you a little bit about what Faith Bible Institute is. It is a college level course in the Bible. You study the Bible chronologically. You can pick up at any point in the study, and it's about a 3-year program. So I'm entering into my 3rd year. So this is I have 2 semesters basically left to complete the whole program. And I was going to show you my book. So this is what the book looks like. That's the thickness of it. And in that, it contains Old Testament, New Testament, and usually something along the lines of a theology type study. So we're studying the life of Christ right now. So with that, we also use the Wilmington's Guide. It was by Dr. Harold Wilmington, and it is a huge concordance. You can see how thick that is. And we use this to go along with our study. And with that, each week, we have reading that we do. Of course, we read verses, we read the scripture, but then we also have pages from this concordance or reference that we read from. So I'm always amazed at the things I learn. So this semester, we're diving into the Exodus. We are studying, let's see, the books we're studying are Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and Joshua. But I was blown away. I'm always blown away by the things I learn. And so this week I wanted to share a little bit about the Exodus. I don't know about you, but if you've been in church for any length of time, you are familiar with the plagues. You know that Moses led the people of Israel out of Egypt from their captivity, and he went before Pharaoh to ask that. And then Pharaoh kept turning him down. And each time he would turn him down, there would be another plague that would come. Then Pharaoh would agree, and we went through this whole cycle. So we had like 10 plagues. And I understood some of the background of that. I feel like I knew that the plagues were meant to show Egypt that God was powerful, more powerful than them, more powerful than the things that they were relying on. But when I started diving into the study, I recognized some things that I did not know, and it was so fascinating. So I thought I would share that today. So the nature of the plagues were to actually challenge a particular Egyptian god, and I thought that was incredible. I knew they worshipped, all kinds of little g gods, and like I said, I knew that the point of the plagues was to show Pharaoh and Egypt God's power. You're going to release the people because God said so. But I didn't recognize that each one of the plagues was actually designed as a specific challenge to a specific God that they worshiped or believed in. So at the end of everything, it actually was to show the Egyptians that their gods and their way was completely their complete impotence. Like their gods did not have any power as compared to the one true God. So I wanted to go through each one of the plagues really quick and just kind of tell you like what the plague was and who they were challenging. So I have my Bible. I started a new thing. I'm doing some journaling. So when I find something interesting in FBI, I copied off my daughter, and I will come back and write that in my journaling Bible. So I've written that in the Bible, so you will see me glancing down as kind of a reference. But I thought this was so fascinating. I feel like, and this is something that has really bothered me, and I just want to jump into it real quick before I go through the plagues. I feel like with our kids, we start with very simple stories, and I think that's appropriate. Like a 3-year-old does not understand all of these things. So it needs to be very simplified for them. But I'm not sure that we ever grow up our stories and provide the true evidence that these things really happened. These are real events in history. This is not just a story. It's not just fabricated. And we've done a lot of things this time to establish timelines, which is a real issue in the Old Testament, like establishing timelines that support like when things actually did happen, and there's artifacts and things like that that's been discovered, and just putting them in the right time period is so important. So I feel like with our children, we keep the stories simplified even as they grow up and need more as far as evidence. So when I think about this, I think about like teaching teenagers or maybe older middle schoolers and presenting this to them, like telling them about each one of these gods and how our God, the one true God, challenged them with this plague to prove to the people of Egypt that their God was not as powerful and that they did not have control of the situation like they thought or like they told the people. So anyway, that's a little side note or a little soapbox of mine. It's really, to me, important that we bring our children up to speed on things and that we show them. That way when they go off to college and they meet these huge challenges in a secular college, especially, of professors who discount the Bible and they have all these theories and laws and things, then our kids are just left floundering because we're still back on stick figures drawn on a board about Moses and Noah's Ark and all that stuff. So I just think we need to bring our curriculums up to speed to make it better as our kids grow up. So anyway, we'll move on from that soapbox. So let's jump into the plagues. If you remember, Moses went to Pharaoh and asked him to let the people go. And of course, he was refusing. And so the first plague came about, and it was the plague where they turned the water into blood. And this plague, the purpose was to challenge Osiris, the god of the Nile. So they actually worshipped a specific god of the Nile River. And if you remember, the water turned to blood. And so each time a plague happened, the Pharaoh would agree, and then he would change his mind, if you remember. So if you can imagine the water being turned to blood, that would be quite an impact to your civilization. All right, so plague number 2 was the plague of the frogs. And the purpose of that was to challenge a frog goddess named Hecht. So they worshipped all kinds of things in creation, and this was one of their gods, was the frog goddess. And so the plague of the frogs probably made them not really want to worship anything to do with frogs again, I would think. All right, then we move into the plague of lice, and that was to challenge Seb, the earth god. Plague number 4 was the swarm of flies that covered the land. And with that one, they were challenging the goddess Hatkok, who was the wife of Osiris. So we had Osiris, who was the god of the Nile, and then his wife, who was Hatkok. And the swarm of the flies was to actually challenge her. Then we moved to plague number 5, and that was the death of all the animals, the beast. And the purpose of that was to challenge Apis, who was their sacred bull god. So they had gods that they worshipped and sacrificed to for different types of things. So like maybe this was a god that they would sacrifice to for the fertility of their animals, so their animals could reproduce and that would contribute to their livelihood. All right, and then we have the plague. So things started, as you notice, initially the plagues, except I think the blood to water was pretty intense, but I mean, not that all of them weren't intense, but it's like as the plagues went on, they become more severe. Like God is really trying to get their attention, it seemed like. All right, and so the plague of boils and blisters was to challenge the god Typhon. And then we move into the plague of hail, and that the purpose of that was to challenge the god they worshipped of the atmosphere. I don't have a name for that god, but they worship, like I said, a lot of the creation, so instead of the creator. And so this one was to challenge the god of the atmosphere. And then when we move into number 8, we have the plague of the locust, and this was to challenge Serapia, the god who protected Egypt against locusts. So they had, I guess, certain things that would destroy crops. and they had gods that they would sacrifice to gain that protection against, their crops being destroyed or whatever. And the purpose of this would be for God to say, hey, this person has no power over anything. And then we move into plague number 9, and this was the plague of darkness. I want to say it was like 3 days, 3 nights, something along that line, that it was completely dark. No moon, no stars, complete pitch black darkness. And, you think, well, would that be so bad? I think that would be horrible. Like, that would really interfere with, like, people's, like, we have the circadian rhythm that we go by, so the daylight triggers all of that. And then also, like, how would you tend to things in that time frame without any daylight? So, like, your farm chores and things like that, it would just been a real nightmare, I feel like. And the purpose of that was to challenge Ra, R-A, the sun god. And the final plague was, of course, the death of the firstborn throughout Egypt. And that was when you have the Passover. The Israelites had to put the blood on the lintel and protect their house from that plague. And that final plague, the one that actually prompted Pharaoh to let the people go and actually not change his mind, initially anyway, was to show God's power over all of their little g gods. Those people just didn't understand, or I shouldn't say didn't understand. They didn't reverence the one true God. They thought that their gods, little gods, were where it was at as far as providing them protection from things, providing them, the reproduction of their animals, the harvest of their crops. And so God had to do something to get their attention to show that they were not, these little gods were not over all of that. He actually was. And so I feel like this kind of tied that up for me a little bit. I don't know if this is interesting to you guys, but like, all these years I knew that the point of the plagues was to show God's power. But when you break it down into these specifics and how the Egyptians and who they were worshiping, it really did show, God's plan. Things are not, I feel like sometimes maybe we don't recognize God's plan even in our own lives as much. And this really shows that each plague was a strategic plan, not just to, I guess, punish the people in a sense, or to get Pharaoh's attention, but also to show them the one true God. So he always has a plan and a purpose to reveal himself. And I feel like that really was brought to light for me with knowing all of this background with the gods and how each plague was used to challenge them. So anyway, that was the big takeaway that I got from FBI this week, and the thing that really stood out to me. Each month, I'm hoping to do a segment like this, depending on what we're studying and the things that really jump out. I'm just amazed at FBI and all the things that that I can gain from really digging deep into the word. And I just learned so much, and I'm just excited to share all of that knowledge with you guys. So with that being said, we're going to wrap this video up here. I hope that you guys enjoyed this, and that maybe, as like me, you've learned something that you didn't really know. And I hope that you guys will join me in the next video. The things I have upcoming for the end of the month is I'm going to do a book wrap up. I'm going to go over all the books that I read in the month of August that were either Christian fiction or Christian nonfiction. So we'll have that video coming up the next week. And then we're going to be jumping into some journaling things that I'm collecting, and where I'm gaining some supplies as I'm looking forward to 2026 and where that's going to take us with journaling. So I hope you guys are here for the journey, and I hope that this week that you're finding a way to really connect with God and grow in your Christian faith. I'll see you in the next one.